All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan, and we got a lot to get into today. Big news over the past couple days in regards to the current ceasefire that is now seemingly in effect between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East. So we have a lot to talk about in that regard. We had Donald Trump go over there just yesterday, give a speech to the Knesset, and then head on over to Egypt to officially sign the deal. We'll talk about everything that happened over there. We'll talk about what's going on right now in terms of the ceasefire, how it's holding up, if it's holding up. And we'll get into all this today and so much more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve System.
Only America first.
End all of these wars. America is trying to play empire. We want everything released, and you're actively covering it up. It's not America first to be pushing our influence in areas where it shouldn't be. We're run by people that don't understand what they're doing and don't understand the ramifications of the policies they're enacting. That's an incredibly dangerous situation. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and hitting like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you could go to my Instagram, X, and Spotify accounts and follow all those pages over there, I'd really appreciate that as well. But let's get right into the news of the past couple days. So, for those who may not know, Donald Trump was in Israel and Egypt yesterday, basically doing the work on the ground to finalize this ceasefire deal that he helped broker between Israel and Hamas to end the last 2 years of death and destruction in Gaza. So, while in Israel, the main point of this trip was to meet with all the big negotiators and finalize the deal and get it signed and get the ceasefire underway so that we can move forward with the next steps of Middle East peace. That's what Donald Trump wants to do, at least. So, while in Israel, he spoke at the Knesset, which is basically the Israeli Congress, and we're going to talk about that speech and the substance of it, but just on looks and appearance of the speech, it was basically vintage Donald Trump. Came in, spoke like he's always spoken, and we're going to dive in here to the substance of the speech because that's what's really important here, and I have some mixed feelings on the substance of the speech. So I do want to read this article from The Independent. It is from yesterday. It's titled, "Trump Urges Israel to Embrace Peace and Prosperity as he takes victory lap in Knesset Speech." It says, quote, "Donald Trump urged Israel to shift focus from waging war against Hamas to what he called the ultimate prize of, quote, peace and prosperity in the Middle East region, as he became just the fifth American president on Monday to address the Knesset. In remarks to the Israeli parliament that were equal parts triumphant and rambling, he said the implementation of a ceasefire agreement and the return of the remaining living hostages marked, quote, the historic dawn of a new Middle East and an incredible triumph for Israel and the world. As the article says right there, this just yesterday was the release. We had the release scene yesterday of the 20 remaining living hostages that were in Hamas captivity, returned to Israel to reunite with their families, and were very touching scenes yesterday. Many of them caught on camera of the hostages reuniting with their families and returning to their home in Israel. And that was all incredible work done by the president to get those hostages released. And it is just, he deserves a lot of credit for finally being the one to get all the hostages returned to Israel. And that was an incredible moment yesterday. It was a great moment for the world to see just yesterday. And this all happened in kind of a timeline. In just a couple hours, Trump spoke, the hostages got released. And I do want to touch on the substance right there, what Trump was saying in that Knesset speech. He is urging Israel to embrace peace and prosperity. And why I think he's urging them to is because many in the Israeli government, mainly on Netanyahu's right, basically Netanyahu and everyone on his right, are very unhappy with this peace deal and did not actually want to make a deal with Hamas. They wanted to continue until they quote-unquote destroyed Hamas, which we all know means driving every Palestinian out of Gaza and taking the land. They've all made this clear in their own words. So when he's urging Israel to embrace peace and prosperity, he's pretty much talking to the people who are largely behind the last couple of years of military fighting and behind the death of tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians. And the reason to even make this point and to even put pressure on them in this way, in this speech, is because they're all out in the open right now in sharing that they don't like this deal. People like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who we've covered in the past. Just last episode, I talked about it. They openly said that they are now threatening to leave Netanyahu's coalition and leave his government if Hamas isn't destroyed, is what they're saying. And right now, as things are right now with this deal, and as things are probably going to be as we progress forward in the deal, Hamas doesn't look like they're going to be destroyed. They look like they will be allowed, many of them, to remain in Gaza. And barring some crazy circumstances, there's not really a realistic way to actually disarm Hamas at this point. So these guys on Netanyahu's right flank, they're saying that peace isn't even enough. They can't bear to have Hamas militants next door to them. And they're saying that is their red line. And for that reason, they're threatening to leave the government and therefore in the spring of 2026, threaten to just put Netanyahu's re-election chances in shambles. And he'll very likely lose an election in early 2026 if these guys leave his coalition. I want to continue reading here, though, from this article from The Independent. We'll move on to other parts of his speech that I didn't like so much, actually. He said, and the article goes, quote, "He also publicly urged Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu on the breach of trust, bribery, and fraud charges he faces." However, Trump's remarks concentrated on the peace deal. Quote, "Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change," Trump said. "As the dust settles, the smoke fades, the debris is removed, and the ashes cleared from the air, the day breaks on a region transformed, and a beautiful and much brighter future appears suddenly within our reach." So the second half of that I did like, all the talk about peace and the chances now of actually reaching a lasting peace. I like all that, and I like the hopefulness of that. What I don't like is the urging of Netanyahu to be pardoned, because this speech is supposed to be about just this, the peace of this, the deal itself. I don't like the urging for a very corrupt and frankly evil person like Netanyahu to be pardoned. I don't like that at all, because number one, if you've looked into the bribery and the corruption trial that Netanyahu is facing himself, it's a pretty overwhelming case, and he very likely would have been arrested because of this and been convicted. That corruption trial itself aside, you want to talk about crimes against humanity. I mean, just look at Gaza right now. It's just, number one, it's flattened. 85+% of the buildings in Gaza are gone. There have been 67,000 plus deaths in Gaza over the past 2 years, the majority of which were women and children, innocent people. And this guy, Benjamin Netanyahu, now you hear in the media, you hear this incredible twist that is just beyond laughable of everyone loves Benjamin Netanyahu now. You hear that he's suddenly become popular now because he agreed to a ceasefire. This is insane. No, he's not. You heard everyone go look this up right now. Pause the video and look this up. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were in the streets of Tel Aviv to give a speech at a peace rally. And when they brought up Benjamin Netanyahu's name, the entire crowd in unison all booed for about a minute straight.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh. Okay. To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, let me just finish my thought. I was in the trenches, guys. Let me just finish my thought.
So this idea that he's suddenly become very popular in Israel and that he would suddenly win an election in Israel is crazy town. That's not reality. But they're trying to twist this. The media is trying to twist it now, that he suddenly became popular because he agreed to a peace deal. The only way that he's suddenly become popular is if everyone just had their memory erased of the last 2 years and forgot the very things that he did and the things that he said openly that he was doing. Even if you want to ignore the 67,000 dead children in Gaza, which is crazy. But even if you wanted to ignore that, if you're going to be an American with any self-respect, you wouldn't ignore the fact that he openly bragged about how his allies are taking over TikTok and how you're going to try and go to Elon and try and mess with the X algorithms to try and sway it in their favor. So this idea that Netanyahu is a popular figure in Israel or America or the world as a whole is just insane. So no, we shouldn't be advocating for him to be pardoned. That's ridiculous, and that's completely besides the point, regardless. So that also happened. And now the last part, which is the most egregious part, and as I want to make it clear as well, if everything was to hold up as it is right now, then great, everything's great. This is incredible. Trump deserves a lot of credit for this deal, for getting it done finally. But if you want to talk about the truth just casually slipping out, here's a video from the speech yesterday where Donald Trump praises none other than Miriam Adelson. Take a look.
The difference is I kept my promise and officially recognized the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. Isn't that right, Miriam? Look at Miriam. She's back there. Stand up, Miriam. Stand up. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I could think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got 60 billion in the bank, 60 billion. And I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it, and they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
So for those who don't know Miriam Adelson or haven't heard that name before, Miriam Adelson and her late husband Sheldon Adelson are the two biggest private Israeli donors, basically. They are basically foreign agents for the state of Israel. They donate for pro-Israel causes, and they're billionaires, and their entire careers in politics are based off buying politicians to make policy in favor of Israel. That is, they're explicitly Israel first. They say this themselves. And what we have there is Donald Trump openly admitting that one of his largest donor, by the way, Miriam Adelson, and one of the biggest private donors in politics is openly Israel first, is donating to politicians on behalf of the state of Israel. How is this not a massive scandal in American politics that we have billionaires donating into our political system on behalf of foreign countries? I'll tell you one person who understands this. It was 2015 Donald Trump who tweeted this out on October 13th, 2015. Quote, Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Rubio because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. I agree. What changed? What happened? Could it have been that the very people that he's saying bought Rubio back in 2015 also gave him $300 million in this election cycle? In this very clip, he says Miriam Adelson got him thinking about Golan, as in the Golan Heights, which was in Syria, and it was a place that Israel would go on to annex. So, and Trump allowed them to annex it. The only reason he did is because Miriam Adelson, as he puts it himself, got him thinking about Golan. Take a look.
But they were very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel.
Now, ask yourself this question. Do you think that if Miriam Adelson hadn't gotten him thinking about Golan, aka told him to look the other way while also handing him hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign donations under the table, do you think Donald Trump himself would have for any principled reason supported Israel annexing the Golan Heights? Really? Donald Trump cares so deeply that Israel controls the Golan Heights that the $100 million from Miriam Adelson didn't affect that at all? Come on. Like, this is what I'm talking about, guys. What changed? Why are the Adelsons suddenly on our side? These are the people that in 2016 we were calling out by name. As I just said here, the Adelsons. Trump called them out by name for buying politicians like our current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. In 2015, he said they are looking to buy Rubio, and now Rubio is our Secretary of State. We're told Rubio's changed. Rubio's become America first. He's on our side now. No, Rubio is the swampiest of the swamp. He is the arch neocon. He is Nikki Haley in a suit. The idea that he's suddenly on our side is insane. After for years and years, we viewed him as the last remnants of the Bush Republican Party. It's crazy. Now, I do want to move on here. Enough bashing of Rubio and the Adelsons. But I do want to move on here to where are we now in this ceasefire? You would assume it's been like a day, so it couldn't have been broken yet, except technically, yes, it has been broken. This is a piece from Drop Site today titled The Genocide in Gaza, and that's actually the subtitle. The title of the article is Israel kills 5 Palestinians in Gaza and announces it will not abide by the terms of the facilitating humanitarian aid despite ceasefire agreement. The article reads, quote, "The Israeli military killed 5 Palestinians in a neighborhood of Gaza City on Tuesday. A number of outlets report that the 5 were going to check on their houses in the eastern Gaza City suburb. The Israeli military admitted to killing the group, claiming they approached its soldiers. There were also reports of the Israeli military killing 1 Palestinian in Khan Yunis. Israel on Tuesday announced it will not abide by the terms of the ceasefire agreement related to humanitarian aid, claiming that Hamas violated the deal regarding the release of the bodies of dead Israeli captives. As part of the deal, Hamas released all 20 living Israeli captives held in Gaza on Monday. The bodies of the remaining 28 dead captives are also expected to be handed over as part of the deal, although the exact timing remained unclear. Hamas did release the bodies of 4 dead Israeli captives on Monday. In a statement, the coordinator of government activities in the territories, the branch of the Israeli military that oversees the West Bank and Gaza, said, quote, Hamas violated the agreement regarding the release of the bodies of the hostages held in the Gaza Strip. As a result, the political leadership has decided to impose a number of sanctions related to the humanitarian agreement that was reached. Starting tomorrow, only half of the agreed number of trucks, 300 trucks, will be allowed to enter, and all of them will belong to the UN and humanitarian NGOs, with no private sector involvement. No fuel or gas will be allowed into the strip, except for specific needs related to the humanitarian infrastructure. Open collective punishment coming out of the Israeli government. Again, it's nothing new. I don't mean to make that seem as if it's unheard of for the Israeli government to engage in collective punishment. I mean, it's all we've seen over the past 2 years. But this is just out in the open, disguised through all this technical language, collective punishment. We're going to cut off half of the aid trucks that were set to come into Gaza to feed the starving children in Gaza and the starving women in Gaza because a couple of the bodies weren't found by Hamas. Now, it is not being at all an apologist for Hamas to acknowledge the facts on the ground here that third parties have also acknowledged that it is going to take time now to find the remains of these dead hostages that were in Hamas captivity. It just is. And this was acknowledged in negotiations by all these different parties, including the Israelis at different times. And now the Israelis are going to use this as a pretext to break the ceasefire in different ways that don't officially break the ceasefire, but do technically break the ceasefire. And now, and I'll read this quote. This is from the Red Cross, that they are also saying that, yes, it is a reality that this is going to take time to find all of these remaining hostages, the remaining bodies of the hostages. It just is. And that's not to be an apologist of Hamas in any way. It just is acknowledging the reality on the ground. And the Israelis are going to be impatient about this and are using this now as collective punishment, are using this as an excuse to enact collective punishment against the Palestinians by cutting off half of the aid that was going to go into Gaza. For what reason could that possibly be? Hamas can't find the bodies and are searching for the bodies and can't find the bodies, and therefore children must get less food. Like, what world is that at all connected? It makes no sense logically. Hamas doesn't return all the hostage bodies, and the Red Cross is acknowledging, and the United Nations has acknowledged, that it is going to take, I'll read the quote. Separately, the International Committee of the Red Cross acknowledged that it will take time to hand over the remains of Israeli captives in Gaza. Quote, that's an even bigger challenge than having the people alive being released. That's a massive challenge, the ICRC's spokesperson, Christian Cardone, told Reuters. Quote, I think that there is clearly a risk that will take much more time, Cardone added, that it could take days or weeks, and that there was a possibility they were never found. Okay, so it is the reality here that it is going to take time to find these remaining hostages that are under rubble at this point because Israel blew up the entire place. That is just reality. And the fact is now that the Israelis are going to use this as an excuse to break this agreement in the ceasefire, break that agreement in the ceasefire, and now enact collective punishment against Palestinian children now, because that's the reality. It's not to be overly emotional about it. It's just the reality that by cutting off the aid, that means children in Gaza will get less food than they otherwise would have because of the actions of Hamas. So you can call it whatever you want, but just definitionally, that is collective punishment. And we're told all the time that the West is against that, but we're told that it is against Western values to enact collective punishment. But again and again, the West makes excuses for collective punishment. So there's just no consistency at all. So, and I know it's not new that Israel's been doing collective punishment. They've been doing it this entire time. It's just this is so blatant and so inexcusable that it just needs to be called out on its own. I do want to end off here with what might just be a new segment here, which is American Israel humiliation ritual of the day. We're gonna show you this quick video here. This is Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee and former Ambassador to Israel David Friedman engaging in what can only be described as this bizarre humiliation ritual that is just out. They're just doing it to embarrass themselves because it's so insane. But apparently this is part of a fundraiser for United Hatzalah. This is, I guess, some Israeli fundraiser of some kind. And it features Mike Huckabee and David Friedman on stage with this band performing a rendition of Sweet Home Alabama, but is titled Sweet Home Yerushalayim. And it was the lyrics of it were changed around to support Greater Israel. Take a look.
Sweet home Yerushalayim, yeah, where God's words ring so true. Sweet home Yerushalayim, Lord, I'm coming home to you. Well, friends and friends don't think it's Jewish. The United Nations call us crooks. But Donald Trump claims it's all Israel, just as it says in all the holy books. Yeah!
Sorry to make you put up with that. That was a rough watch. But I think that's where we'll end it off for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Please be sure to like and subscribe and go follow me on Instagram, X, and Spotify. See you soon. Have a good day.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve System.
Only America first.